Hey everyone, glad you could join us again today. We have been talking this week about the idea of humility. Yesterday I talked about the importance of us humbling ourselves under the mighty hand of God, and really how humility towards God is the pathway to trust. Like we're never fully going to trust God until we humble ourselves before Him and understand that He is in charge and we are not. Today I want to talk to you just for a couple minutes about the importance of humbling ourselves before other people. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, it says this: "Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind let each one of you regard one another as more important than himself. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others." Here, Paul tells us, he says, don't do nothing out of selfishness or empty conceit. It's literally empty glory. He said, don't do anything out of those attitudes, but consider or regard one another as more important than yourself. You see, a lot of times people think humility is putting ourselves down. And that's not what Paul talks about here. He says humility is not putting ourselves down. Humility is lifting those around us up. Do nothing out of selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, regard one another as more important than himself. As I think about that, I'm reminded several years ago, my son was just 5 or 6 years old at the time. We were at a huge wave pool. And the waves would come and crash over us, and he was afraid of going under the water. And so what I would do is I would stand there next to him, and when the big wave came, what I would do is I would grab him and I would hold him up above my head, and I would go under the wave, and he would kind of ride across the top of the wave, and he had a wonderful time. I was getting water in my nose and swallowing it in my mouth, but he had a great time. And as I think about what Paul writes here, that's exactly what he wants us to do for the other people around us. That we are to lift others up, be willing to take the waves and have them crash down on us so that those people around us can enjoy the goodness of life. But listen to what Paul says here as he goes on in verse 5. He says, "Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus." You see, we look most like Jesus when we are willing to lift those around us up. Listen, you may today say, I demand this right, or I deserve this right. And you might be absolutely correct. You might deserve it. But the moment we demand our rights, even as much as we deserve them, is the moment we stop looking like Jesus. Because Jesus humbled himself and he came as the form of a servant. He said, I did not come to serve, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. Jesus was the perfect example, the one who lifted those around him up. So I want to encourage you today, as you interact with the people in your life, your friends, your relatives, your associates, your neighbors, that you would look out for their interests and find ways to lift them up today. I look forward to what God is doing through us as we learn the importance of humbling ourselves before God and before others.